Hello, everybody. This is Unsolicited Advice. I am Tara.
I'm Jack.
And I'm Julie.
And we are working moms who are juggling marriage, motherhood, careers, and we are dropping a few bottles and balls along the way, right?
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers to that. Don't drop that bottle. Our topic today is sex talk. Woohoo! And we're not just talking like the sexting that you might be doing with your husband or
Yeah, because that's happening.
You know, those texts you ignore, you're like, yeah, can you pick up whatever from Longos? And we're not talking about, you know, the dirty talk that your husband does on the way home from work, like, can I pick anything up for dinner?
I feel like we need to get you back on track here. What is going on in
We're
your
talking
relationship?
about kids.
We're talking about kids, and we're not talking about sex talk with kids. We're talking about sex talk and how do you talk to your kids about sex.
Teaching them. How do you teach them? When do they learn?
When do they learn? That's a good starting point, because I know for myself, I have a 5-year-old, and your kids are probably nowhere near ready to talk about sex.
Well, this is a curious question because she has a 5-year-old girl and I have a 5-year-old boy. Is it different introducing the sex talk between a boy and a girl? These are different things that I don't know, and I feel like Julie's going to be our expert on this.
I might have some strong opinions about this.
I'm shocked.
Look,
I didn't think you
right?
would.
Weird.
Yeah.
So weird. Okay, so this is how I did it in my household, and that was my kids have never not known about sex.
Yeah.
They never got sat down and told. They just always grew up knowing. They're like farm kids. They just always, you know, like, okay, if we want to have a lamb, you know what the sheep has to do. So they never, and also keep in mind I have 6 kids, so there was always another one coming along. So they did
Lots
just
of
always
lambs.
know. But I loved them always knowing, because then they never had that moment where they looked at you and they're like, you and dad? Like, they
You
just
did
always.
the lamb thing?
You did that, yeah.
So you've actually told your children,
Two,
from an early
3-year-old.
age.
2 to 3-year-old. Actually, I have a really great resource that I love. It's a book, and it's by Roby Harris, and it's called It's Not the Stork. And if you just read it with them, it's so good. It's so good, especially if you're not comfortable talking about it.
Well,
right?
I'm not
So
comfortable.
this is why my mother-in-law gifted me with a treat the other day. She's
What have
I
you
know,
got
but
there?
I love her. So this was my husband's when he was younger. And as funny as I thought this was, I actually thought that this was a great idea because I'm actually not comfortable talking about sex with my kids. And so what a better way than to just have a book, because you're reading with your child.
Yes.
And I think that's a great way to
And
introduce it.
no eye
and
contact
bring it
too.
in.
If
Yeah.
you're uncomfortable. But this is what I don't really get. I don't get why people are uncomfortable with the conversation. It does not boggle. Like, any question I get asked, I just answer it. I'm not weird about it at all. Why?
It's in my Scottish blood. I don't know. And it's how I was raised. I was raised in a very
It's how you-
conservative family where we didn't talk about it. And it's something I definitely want to change. For instance, for the longest time, I was telling my boys that they were calling their penises wieners. And this is one big thing that I found really important, is that no, it's not a wiener. It's a penis. So now we call it a penis wiener, but at least they
getting closer.
know
The official title.
that it's, and I think that's a really good place to start with your kids is
Proper terms.
don't give pet names. Don't make up these, like, don't sugarcoat it. It's a penis. It's a vagina.
Well, and this was all a part of the whole sex ed curriculum last year when that came out. A lot of people were like, well, why do they need to know they need to know the names. They need to know how things work. I'm a big fan of the sex ed curriculum because I think the more knowledge they have, the more power they have.
Yeah.
And they were finding like kids might be in a bad situation, or there may have been some sexual assault, and they're not even really knowing what the names of the parts are.
Actually, that's a good point. Someone said to me to teach my daughter to use the word vagina, because if anybody, like, a lot of the times those sort of incidents are someone you know, that it deters anyone who might try that on your child, because if your child is using anatomically correct words, that means they're having an open conversation with their parents, and that means that person is less likely to try, because they can't
Isolate
muddle.
Because a predator is going to try and isolate a child, and
But
they're
they're
right,
gonna-
if they're having that open conversation.
But they're
going to
say, "Oh, well, they misunderstood the term I used," but
But
not
I
if you're
think
using
I think
the
what
right
we can take away from this is if you don't teach your child about sex, somebody else
Right.
will.
Right.
And I think that's
Yeah.
the important thing to take away from all of this, is that if you want them to learn about it the way it really is, it's got to come from
You don't want them learning about it through like internet porn. The other thing too is if they ask the question, they're ready for the answer.
That's true.
Oh,
Cheers. Well, join us next Sunday. We've got another topic for you, and we're here every week. Unsolicited advice.
Because we are not busy at all.
We have
got
nothing else to
all
do
the
but
time
drop
in the
some
world.
bottles. So subscribe and leave us your comments. How do you deal with sex talk with your kids? And
You
Send them to
say
Auntie Julie. I'll sort them out.
And to Tara's point, if you don't teach your kids about sex, Julie will. Okay?
Send them over. Cheers. I'll do my neighbors send them over.
Do they?
Yeah.
Can I send Maddie over
I know.
for a swim and some
Anytime.
sex talk?
Anytime.
goodness
Yeah,
You got
gracious.
it. Yeah.
You know what? I always wanted to like get a nanny or a babysitter and say, okay, I need you every night for like a week, and then I'll say Maddie goes to bed at like 7:00, and she would actually be the one that slept trained my
Oh,
kid.
did
She
she-
wouldn't
oh,
know
right,
it
right,
because she
right.
wouldn't know. She'd be like, your kid's crying. I'm like, oh well, you're the babysitter, and then I would come home after a week.
Why'd
and
you
my
bother
kid-
having her?